Welcome to the Nintendo Iceberg Part 1. This is going to be Part 1 of a two-part series in which basically I'm going to be talking about this Nintendo Iceberg. That I found. Why splitting into two parts? For one, as you can see by the picture, it's a pretty big iceberg. Like Titanic level iceberg. But also, obviously, I feel like, this is my first video, so I feel like, every great show has to start with at least a two-part premiere, at least. So, I feel like here, I also have to start with a two-parter. But anyways, let's just get into it.
See the latest Nintendo newsletter?
Whoa, nice graphics. I'd like to get my hands on that game.
You mean you haven't played it yet? We can play it on my Nintendo Entertainment System. It's The Legend of Zelda, and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad. Octoroks, Tektites, Levers, too. But with your help, our hero pulls through. Yeah, go Link, yeah, get Zelda.
Awesome.
Intense.
The Nintendo Entertainment System. Your parents help you hook it up. The Legend of Zelda sold separately.
Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. This is most likely referring to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It is, as of recording this, the most recent Super Smash Bros. Game, and it has the famous tagline that everybody is here. Well, as for if that's actually true, everyone's so far. Hey, we're still voting for Waluigi, but whatever. But yeah, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is the most recent, and probably the definitive Smash game. Yes, I know some people would say, no, it's Melee, no, it's Brawl. But I feel like if you want to have the most complex, most just deluxe Smash game, then go with Ultimate. But, yeah, and also it's my personal favorite Smash game. In fact, it's probably personally a top 5 game in general. I love it. Pokemon. Pokemon is the biggest entertainment franchise of all time. It started back in 1996 on the Game Boy, which is actually kind of phenomenal since at the time the Game Boy was kind of dying. In fact, that was probably the last big game that came out on the Game Boy. But Pokemon is still relevant to this day. It was inspired by the developer of the original game always wanting to collect bugs. Come on, what do you think is a bug type? It's a reference to him always collecting bugs when he was younger, in his youth. Come on. Literally, Kanto region from the original Pokemon is literally just an actual place in Japan. It's the only region in the Pokemon franchise that actually is, like an actual real region in Japan, or whatever other country they use. With each generation having a new, different place that the main character is, and having also a new bunch of, usually 100 or so, new collectible monsters. Which, at this point there's so many. I know it's always goofed on, but there's literal keys Pokemon. I'm pretty sure at this point we probably have 1,000 Pokemon. But overall, as for the actual franchise quality though, some people say that it kind of fell off, and stuff like Scarlet and Violet was released with more bugs than Cyberpunk 2077 at launch, but still, but I think Pokemon is still doing pretty good. Also, Pokemon Winds and Waves is coming out soon, but I don't know. Literally every single one of the starters just look like copy and pasted versions of previous starters, and I'm just not very excited for it. Look, personally, hot take, the last good Pokemon game was Sun and Moon, I'm sorry. Every Pokemon game after that ranges from okay, like Sword and Shield, or just straight up bad in my opinion, like Scarlet and Violet. I really don't like that one. Although I'm not saying there weren't bad Pokemon games before that. I don't like Black and White. I know that's a bit of a hot take, but I've never really gotten the appeal of Gen 5. I've always felt like it's one of the weakest gens. Same thing with Gen 2. But overall, still, though, I think that the Pokemon franchise will hopefully do well. And, hey, there's still probably going to be a new Pokemon game every 5 years or so, since this franchise is never going to die. Mods or modifications are modifications to a pre-existing game, with it basically being a way to update it. There are several mods, but a lot of the time they're taken down by Nintendo. I mean, mods are pretty interesting, but there's not that much to say about them. Nintendo. You guys know about Nintendo. I shouldn't have to talk about it. I think the only real interesting thing is that they weren't always making games, but like, I don't know. Nintendo, I don't have to explain, okay? Anyone who's watching this probably already knows all the stuff going on with Nintendo, everything that's happened, the history, etc., etc. Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 might be one of the most loved consoles of all time, and to be fair, yeah, the Nintendo 64 is pretty great. With it having so many classics, Super Mario 64, you know, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I can never pronounce the word right. But so many classics. And overall, it is an absolute classic console. And it also launched some new franchises. Primarily Super Smash Bros., which, you know, ended up being a pretty big franchise. So, that is the story largely of the Nintendo 64 and the legacy. Lucina is a clone of Moth. This is referring to how in Super Smash Bros., Lucina is a clone of Moth. I don't really know what else I'm supposed to say, you know. GameCube. The GameCube was a console released after the N64, and its overall at the time was kind of disappointing, especially since, well, it came after the N64. It's pretty old to top that, but nowadays it's looked at with more nostalgia. But I do think that the GameCube was kind of dealt a bad hand, especially with its launch title being Luigi's Mansion, which, yes, is a great game, but for one, it's only a few hours long, which is kind of weird for a launch title, and also, it just felt weird because the previous consoles, like, launch title was Mario 64, and you follow that up with Luigi hunting down ghosts. Like, again, I'm not saying the game's bad, the game's amazing, obviously, but it just kind of feels off-putting, you know? Like, we go from probably one of the most revolutionary games, not just of the 90s, but of all time, to Luigi's Mansion, which, again, great game, absolutely fantastic, but, I don't know, it just can't hold up to 64. But overall, GameCube, I feel like, could have been the next thing after the N64, especially since it's kind of like the SNES, you know? The NES they were kind of practicing with 2D pixels, and then SNES mastered it. GameCube mastered what the N64 did, but still, I mean, in general, not really that much more to say. Nintendo Switch Online. The Nintendo Switch Online is basically the online subscription service for the Nintendo Switch. It is an addition that adds several other stuff like retro consoles to the Nintendo Switch. But overall, it is pretty nice, and it could very much help. Backwards long jump, aka the BLJ, is a famous technique you can do in Super Mario 64, in which basically, in the scene where where you have to climb up Bowser, if you don't have all the stars, it'll just be an infinite staircase. Except speedrunners figured out that actually, if you get to there, if you do a correct bit of buttons, which I'm not really that sure about, and mash it enough, then you could go up the stairs, creating probably the most famous video game glitch of all time, which could basically make you skip a large part of Mario 64. Simple flips. I don't really know that much about this guy. Of what I know, I think he's like some kind of like speedrunner, YouTuber. Look, this is one of the only YouTubers on this list that I don't know anything about. So, I don't know, maybe you should have been a little lower. Nathaniel Bandy. Nathaniel Bandy is basically a YouTuber who kind of got me into the Nintendo space, you know, on YouTube. And he's done many stuff. He's made several top 10s, ranking stuff from worst to best. And he also has done other stuff like creating a second channel called Bandy's Bin. And overall, he's a pretty prolific guy on Nintendo YouTube. Super Smash Bros. Tournaments. Now, for whatever reason, Nintendo has a hate boner for Super Smash Bros. Tournaments. They will shut down any that they see, which is really weird, since I feel like tournaments for fighting games usually end up boosting the success and notoriety for fighting games, you know? I mean, come on, for example, Street Fighter 3 Alpha, nobody would really care that much about Street Fighter 3 Alpha if not for how much pros love playing that game. I mean, what do you think? It's literally probably the most loved fighting game of all time, so I don't know what Super Smash Bros. Is thinking by destroying all tournaments that come. Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch and its sequel, which is on the list, so I'm also just going to be talking about this in this one entry, is the most recent Nintendo consoles. Basically, the whole idea is that it's both a console and a handheld. Pretty cool idea. It is also, honestly, what kind of revived Nintendo. I mean, the 3DS and Wii U wasn't really doing the best for Nintendo. And Nintendo was, at that time, probably the worst that they've done practically ever during the early 2010s. The only time I can think of when they were doing worse is maybe in the 2000s with the GameCube. But even then, they were making good games. I mean, basically all the good games that ever came out during the Wii U and 3DS era are on Switch. But yeah, overall, it is a pretty decent console, but definitely not an S-tier console, especially since there's so many ports. So it's definitely pretty beloved nowadays, but as for if it'll make the tests of time the same way that the N64, Wii, or SNES did, hey, only time can tell. Fan games. Yet another thing that Nintendo has a weird hate boner about, because they just love taking down fan games in their free time, presumably. Most famously, and probably most recently, although at this point I can even tell, is Power World, which was a Pokemon-inspired game, which, look, I mean, I know it's kind of controversial, but it was kind of a Pokemon ripoff, except it was an actual good Pokemon ripoff, because instead of just ripping off Pokemon, it took the main idea in Pokemon and kind of made a better Pokemon than, like, since Gen 4, in my opinion. So, it was a pretty great game. But Nintendo took it down. They're in the middle of a lawsuit. Although then also some other recent Nintendo fan games, but that's a whole other story. But all you really need to know is Nintendo famously hates them. If you really want to go in depth, there's probably 1,000 videos about it. So go watch one of those. Tetrabit Gaming. Tetrabit Gaming's whole goal is to try and find glitches in video games. I used to really like his stuff, but I don't know, I've kind of fallen off of him, but from what I remember, he makes some pretty quality stuff, which is pretty cool. Hopefully he's doing good, you know? Emulators. Wow, fan games are now emulators too? Wow, we really are knocking off all the things Nintendo hates. Nintendo also hates emulators. In case you don't know what an emulator is, it's basically emulating some kind of game for something that was not made for, most usually PC. And Nintendo hates these, which, to be fair, makes sense, but sometimes they just go too far, and it kind of feels extreme, you know, with emulation. And to the point where it's like, is it really that big of a deal? But it's another one of those things where maybe it's a thing with Japan, but they're just super protective about their rights. Like, Nintendo isn't the only one. Like, I know in the States, like, Sega's super chill about, like, how you use the characters, but in Japan, they are as protective as Nintendo, you know, in Japan. So maybe it's just like a different culture in Japan, you know. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe it's something else. I don't really know. But that is hopefully going to be the only times I have to talk about how weird Nintendo can be with the licenses for their characters, but knowing how common that is with them, it's definitely not going to be the last, even if I hope it is. Super Mario 64, the animated series. Super Mario 64 is very iconic, but there's a bit of a myth of Deke, the creators of the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, and the Super Mario Bros. 3 Show, and the Super Mario Bros. World Show, making a Super Mario Bros. 64 show. But of what I know, that's just a rumor. I don't think it's actually real. But hey, who knows? Maybe it is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by it since they'd made some kind of animated series for every major Mario game up to that point. But also it would kind of make sense that they'd stop doing that around now, since at the time Mario was going through a bit of a shift. I mean, there was a whole decade where there was basically no new 2D Mario games. Like from 1996 with Super Mario 64 all the way till 2006 with New Super Mario Bros. There was basically nothing about 2D Mario left, aside from the advanced games, but even then, those aren't new games, they were just ports of previous games. And I guess also the one Super Mario Bros. 1985 remake. But I mean, other than that, not really that much has changed. But hey, who knows, maybe a Super Mario Bros. 64 show would have been in the air and maybe it was just canceled. Super Smash Bros. Melee. Super Smash Bros. Melee is probably the second most loved Smash game because it's very loved. I'm talking about Melee is the third strike of its franchise because people love Melee. And overall though, it is very loved, but I've never really gotten the love for it. I mean, I get it's a great game, but I don't know, it never really hit the spot for me. I mean, there was just so many better Smash games. I mean, I argue Brawl and Ultimate are both better than Melee. I feel like a large reason why people like Melee so much is just because of the nostalgia factor. Maybe someone can comment down below and tell me why Melee is such a good game, but I've just never understood it. Among Us on Nintendo Switch. Alright, get all your bogus and imposter, whatever the heck. Do people even remember Among Us? I mean, hey, we might start remembering it again, even if one virus really takes off soon. But overall, I do believe that Among Us on Nintendo Switch is kind of weird, since, I mean, it just feels weird seeing Among Us on a Nintendo platform. But I mean, in case you don't know what Among Us is, it's a game about trying to figure out who the killer is out of a bunch of people. It's basically like the Werewolf or Mafia games. Overall, I've heard that it's pretty good, and I used to play it during 2020, 2021, but I don't know, I've stopped playing it. I don't know what's happening. One time I tried to replay it and everyone was like, horses? I think that was an April Fool's joke. I really don't know. But that was TL1.
From Nintendo, new Super Mario World, created especially for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It's a bit more exciting, a bit more challenging, a bit more graphic, a bit more colorful, a bit more realistic, a bit more levels, a bit more secret, a bit more enemies, a bit more friends, a bit more sound, a bit hotter, a bit cooler, a bit weird, a bit more revolutionary, a bit more Mario, a bit more of what you want. It's 16-bit, and it's yours only if you get new Super Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Tier 2. Plushies. Plushies are basically stuffed toys that you can use for, well, any kind of toy, you know? And they're often used for franchises, which I find pretty interesting. There's several Nintendo plushies. I own a lot of them, but I think they're pretty cool. I mean, that's kind of it. Pikmin. Pikmin is a franchise about a little guy named Alamo who has to pick out these little Pikmin out of the door. It's a pretty fun franchise, and probably top 5 Nintendo franchise for me. I love it. It's up there with stuff like Punch-Out for me, because it's just so satisfying, just basically being a U.S. war general and just sending out your soldiers to go die in war for you. That's it. Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color was an addition to the Game Boy, except unlike something like the Game Boy Advanced, in which there was a whole new handheld, the Game Boy Color was basically just the Game Boy, except now it was in color. I mean, again, it's just kind of a better Game Boy. But other than that, not really that much to say about it. Steve in Super Smash Bros. This is referring to how when Minecraft Steve joined Super Smash Bros., it literally broke the internet. Which, to be fair, it makes sense. Minecraft Steve joined Super Smash Bros. Does that not sound just wrong to you? But it literally broke Twitter. And I still think Minecraft Steve might be the hypest character reveal trailer of, not just of all of Nintendo, but I think in like all of gaming. I mean, in all of media, what other reveal trailer literally broke the internet? Like, Twitter literally shut down because they couldn't run it anymore because of how many people were talking about it. Like, I don't know what else could cause this kind of uproar other than like Jonesy from Fortnite or something joining Smash. Even then, it probably won't even be as big as Minecraft Steve joining Smash. It was just an unreal experience. Licensed Disney games. Licensed Disney games. Oh, basically, Disney games licensed by Nintendo. I don't really know what I'm supposed to say about this. Yeah, there's licensed Disney games that are licensed by Nintendo so that they're official. That's kind of it. Like, I don't know what this tier is about. I mean, I don't really get it. Game Boy. The Game Boy was the first ever handheld console created by Nintendo, which makes this a very important piece of Nintendo history. Although in modern ages, the Game Boy doesn't really age that well. In fact, I would argue it's the worst handheld of all. Just because, yes, it was made in 89, but that doesn't excuse its just terrible quality, Literally, you could probably go for any other handheld as, literally any other handheld is better than Game Boy. Genuinely, Game Boy is probably one of Nintendo's weakest products, in my opinion. Game Boy Advanced. Now this is where it's at. The Game Boy Advance is gas. Do people say that nowadays? I don't know. But the Game Boy Advance, now that's where it's at. I'd argue that it's probably Nintendo's best handheld. With the Game Boy Advance, it featured many new games. Also, it's one of the only Nintendo console/handheld with really no new Mario game. I mean, sure, there was the Mario Advance Quadrilogy, I guess, but those were all just remasters and not actual new games. But yeah, Moth Melee Grab Range. This is referring to how crazy Moth's grab range was in Smash Melee. Genuinely insane. Waluigi for Smash. Waluigi is probably the most wanted character. People just love him. Which is kind of weird when you realize that he used to be one of the most hated Mario characters. But nowadays, he's very much loved. And it's weird, because he's the only major Mario character not here. They literally added a plant before it. A plant. Dog, you could hang up Piranha Plant as a part of a house. Waluigi is the house. But genuinely, it is kind of weird how Waluigi's not there. But I don't think it's too crazy to believe that maybe Nintendo's not including him just because it's not including Waluigi, it makes people talk about him more, And so, Waluigi, I don't think is ever going to be added. Although, hey, Even though although, hey, Waluigi, come on. How else are you gonna represent the Mario sports games? He was literally made for the Mario sports games. Come on, it's right there. Just do it. Geno. Geno's another highly requested character for Smash. Geno was introduced in Super Mario RPG, and there seems to be, for a while, it looked like there was some kind of rights issue because Square Enix was the ones who actually created, like, Super Mario RPG. Nintendo just published it, since it's Super Mario RPG. So, but then he just got added as a mini costume for in Ultimate. So it's like, although personally, I don't really care that much about Geno to really be like, yeah, Geno, let's get him in. So, I don't know, I mean, if he gets added, that'd be cool, I guess. But, I don't know. I feel like we have one too many Mario characters. Like, really the only one that we're actually missing is Waluigi. Because otherwise, I feel like then it's like, how many Mario characters do we really need? Not as many. We gotta add more variety. I mean, come on. There's only 3 Zelda characters. 3. Well, actually 5, but come on. 3/5 of them are just Links. There's enough Links to make a whole Triforce. What is this? Genuinely. Like, come on. Where's another Zelda character to be added? And even then, you could argue, well, there's technically more because of Sheik. Sheik? I don't even think Sheik should count either, since Sheik's just an alteration of Zelda, and in many of the games, they're basically just a stance fighter, so it's just weird. Pokemon cards. Pokemon cards are probably a huge reason why Pokemon is such a big franchise. It's because of just like how much there is. There's the games, TCG, and anime. But the TCG is a pretty big part. There's in fact a whole new community just for the TCGs of Pokemon. People love it. Although personally, I've never actually met someone who actually knew how to play Pokemon, like the card game. Like, we just make up the rules as we go. And hoping we could, like, come up with some kind of consistent way of playing, So, that's that. Alpharad. Alpharad is another Nintendo YouTube creator. He's made many different things, and in fact, he's another reason why I got into Nintendo, It was because of his Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Nuzlocke, in fact, that made me want to play Smash, which I think is very interesting. But, I don't know, I've never really been the biggest fan of Alpharad. I mean, he's okay, I guess. But again, I mean, in general, I've never been the biggest fan of Nintendo YouTubers. I don't know, there's just something weird about them. The only one that I actually like is Scott the Woz. Scott the Woz is awesome. Okay, in fact, stop watching this video. This video is terrible, okay? Can't wait for when, like, 2 years, one would be like, oh god, that was terrible. But stop watching this video and go watch Scott the Woz. It's the only actual good Nintendo creator, and I'll stand by that. Except for AVGN, because AVGN's the exception because he's not even a Nintendo creator. He's just AVGN. I don't even know how to describe him. But hey, he still technically counts because he used to be the angry Nintendo nerd, so checkmate. Magic Scrumpy. Okay, this is another one I don't really know anything about. I think he's also a Nintendo YouTuber. It appears that he makes some kind of Super Smash Bros. Melee, like, content. He's, like, popularized it. I don't really know that much about him. So, I don't really know what else to say. Project M. Project M is probably the most famous Nintendo fan game. And also probably the most famous one that didn't get taken down. I think so at this point. I don't even know. Basically, it's the idea of making Super Smash Bros. Brawl, except now making it like Melee. And it has become so big that it's basically become its own fandom, with people loving it into itself. I think this is genuinely kind of insane, especially since Nintendo hasn't taken it down, which makes this kind of a marvel in terms of feats that this is still alive. And that is the end of Tier 2. Now to move on to Tier 3.
Live in a two-dimensional world.
We won't go in one direction
or seek where we can say.
We will walk through walls.
We will take a look around us.
We will not be confined.
We believe in the path of least limits.
We won't be told how to view the world.
We will experience true freedom.
We will not compromise. We will live the game through our hands.
We will be in control of something.
We will change the system.
Bootlegs. So, bootlegs is basically unofficial material of really anything. A lot of the time when people think of bootlegs, it'd be games, but really anything. Bootleg toys, bootleg shorts, bootleg movies, basically anything. Often bootlegs are kind of confused with rip-offs, but they're very different. Bootlegs usually use the actual character or something similar to them. Meanwhile, rip-offs at least try to disguise what they're trying to steal from. There's several famous Nintendo bootlegs. Enough that I honestly probably will do a video about it. Well, once I run out of topics, so never really, since I have a bunch of topics that I'm excited to cover later on, but still. So hopefully I'll eventually get to talk about it. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. Mario and Sonic, they're two gaming rivals. They have been fighting each other since 1991. And so in 2006, 15 years later, the two finally unite to play in the Olympics. Yeah, this is kind of weird. Like, of all things, Mario and Sonic, the two gaming legends, teamed up to do the Olympics. That's like if Batman and Spider-Man teamed up, and then they only did it so that they could both play basketball against each other. It's like, maybe get your priorities straight. Especially since they're basically all just kind of boring minigame collections that are just pumped out every few years. Although, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games 2020 Tokyo seem to be the last one since, well, apparently the Olympics is moving on to, like, AI stuff for cross-media stuff. I don't know, but hopefully we can get a continuation of the Mario and Sonic games in some way. Maybe an actual crossover that's not in the Olympics. Club Nintendo. Club Nintendo is basically some kind of club to, get specialties for Nintendo that you have to, pay for and stuff. Although the initiative ended in 2015. That's really all. I don't know what else you're supposed to say about Club Nintendo. My Nintendo is very similar to Club Nintendo, in which basically it's just like a follow-up to it that's extremely similar, in which basically it's the same whole idea except now virtual. So again, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Licensed Cartoon Network games. Those Cartoon Network games released on Nintendo, though, officially licensed. That's really about it. It's just there were Cartoon Network games licensed by Nintendo. It happened. My dad still hasn't returned. I'm still missing him. Sorry, I gotta... let's just move on to the next entry. Tatanga. Tatanga is the main villain of Super Mario Land. He's this weird alien-looking warlord, which again serves to another thing that makes Super Mario Land just feel weird. It does not feel like it belongs with all the other games. It's almost always considered a spin-off. It doesn't have Peach, it doesn't have Bowser, it doesn't have Luigi, it doesn't have anybody except for Mario. It might as well have been a completely new game. And there's another reason why. Why aren't aliens just here? Aliens just later on, but then we're never anyone like this guy, you know? So it just kind of feels random. But this guy's probably one of my favorite Mario villains, just because, I mean, A, there's not only that many, and B, he's just so funny to me. Like, I love whenever there's a villain in games who in a massive franchise appears once and then just dips. You know, that's why I love Wart so much, just because I find it so funny how he appeared for like a single game and then just dipped and has never returned to the franchise, or at least the games. You know, that's just kind of funny to me. Joey Poloni, I think I'm pronouncing this right. This is another guy I've never really heard of. The more I'm doing this iceberg, the more I'm realizing I don't know that much about Nintendo YouTubers. But Joey, as I'm just gonna call him, I think he's some kind of like music creator. It also looks like he kind of made those piracy videos that like were big a few years back. I don't know, I mostly don't really remember them aside from the one Mario DS one. Like the Mario Party DS one. Where it's like Piracy's No Party. I don't remember any of the others, other than like the majority of them were fake, you know? But I don't know that much about this guy. I mean, he seems cool. That's kind of it. Yeah. Cooking Mama. Cooking Mama is basically a franchise about having to cook up foods for Mama. This is a very underrated franchise, but again, it's in some weird legal problems. Like, of what I heard, the latest game was like spyware and like illegal or something. So like, that's just crazy, you know? So I really don't know what's going on with Cooking Mama right now. All I know is that of what I know, the games seem pretty fun, although I've never actually given it a try, to be honest. Silly Melee. I have no idea what this is. I think this is another Smash thing. I think this is some kind of Melee mod or something. Again, I do light research for this, so I'm really confused. I don't know. It looks like some kind of fan game. I don't know. Maybe someone in the comments can fill it in. But I genuinely have no idea, and I have no idea what's on this list, honestly. Nintendo Land, also known as the GOAT. Nintendo Land is the only reason why you should get a Wii U, and it's genuinely shocking that it hasn't been ported since it's the only good game left on the Wii U. So it's like, how is it not made the Switch to the Switch? It doesn't make any sense, especially since there's so many file games. Genuinely, Nintendo Land is so good. Genuinely, please check it out. I just want Nintendo to make a sequel, please. Nintendo Land could easily be one of the biggest franchises. It could be so much bigger. I love Nintendo Land. It is absolutely fantastic. Like the Luigi's Mansion one is so cool. The Super Mario Tag one is just awesome. Like, please, Nintendo, release another one. In other words, though, it's a minigame collection of a bunch of different minigames. But unlike something like Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, where they clearly overview quantity over quality, here's the exact opposite. There's something like 10 minigames, but they're all so good. And if you have friends over, then it's such a great experience. And again, it's honestly the only reason you should still get a Wii U. Genuinely, Nintendo, like, come on, at least give us a port. Come on, Nintendo. Please. Why port every single game from the Wii U and then just leave Nintendo Land to die in, like, the Sahara Desert with no water, as it's like, please, give me something. Like, God, just port it. What do you have against Nintendo Land? What did it do to you? Pocket Monsters. Pocket Monsters were the original name for Pokemon, and still is kind of there. Ever wondered why it's called Pokemon? Poke, like Pocket Monsters, and Mon, like monsters. See? But yeah, that's why it's called a Pokemon. And I believe in some regions it's still called Pocket Monsters, which is kind of interesting. 7 Granddad. This is the most famous bootleg, which kind of makes this deal come full circle. This is basically I believe, a bootleg of the Flintstones, except it has Mario, and again, for whatever reason, it's called Seven Granddad. I don't know why. Whatever, though, because that's the end of Tier 3. Now on to Tier 4, and the last tier I'm going to be covering in the first part.
Nintendo GameCube Born to Play.
WiiWare is an extension of the Wii console, which is basically an online thing, which can have you still download games using money. So kind of like Switch Online, or the Nintendo Switch eShop, whatever it's called. Pretty simple. Undertale on Nintendo Switch. Not that much to say here. It's just Undertale's on Nintendo Switch. I don't know why it's so much lower than Among Us? I don't know. That's something you'd have to ask the person who actually created the iceberg. Not me, okay? Not me. I'm just some random guy. E-reader. E-reader is basically something that Nintendo made where you could scan codes in order to have them be put in the game, kinda. It's confusing. But this is kind of like an early version of Amiibo. This also heavily reminds me of the Hyperscan, which I find very interesting. But, e-readers were basically the prototype to Amiibos. So, that's pretty interesting, I'd say. Fortnite on Nintendo Switch. Yet another thing where it's whoa, Fortnite's on the Nintendo Switch, but again, not too crazy, come on, they literally have Mortal Kombat on the Nintendo Switch, no matter how laggy it is, So I feel like entries like this, I'm just gonna skip any entries future like this, just because it's we get it. It's on the Nintendo Switch. There's really nothing to speak about, Nintendo Power. Nintendo Power was the official Nintendo magazine for cheats, hacks, what games to get, etc., etc. And it lasted for a long time. People loved it, although eventually people just stopped caring about newspapers and magazines, and eventually it ended up ending, which is kind of sad, especially since it was part of so many people's childhoods, But Nintendo Power was kind of over, although its heyday was undeniably the 90s. Come on. I feel like everyone has seen the one picture from the first issue. Come on, everyone knows it. Vine Sauce.
Hey, Vsauce, Michael here.
No, I said Vine Sauce, not Vsauce. God. But anyways, though, yeah, not that much to talk about. It's just another Nintendo YouTuber. Probably not going to be talking about that many Nintendo YouTubers in depth since, I don't know. What do I even have to say? I don't really know. If you want to learn more about him, just, watch his videos, dog. Don't watch this one. If you want to learn more about them, I don't want to, promoting other people's channels. That's just weird to me. Chibi Robo, my goat. Chibi Robo should be one of the big franchises, and it's somehow not. I love Chibi Robo. Chibi Robo is so cool. Basically, it's a little robot with a plug. You have to go around the house. It's so cool. But it never was actually given its just desserts, and they always just made it terrible. The original game released on GameCube in 2005. By that point, the GameCube was long dead, and everything after that is either made for some kind of weird thing that nobody uses, was released in a specific shop. Overall, I feel like Nintendo, it feels like, how sometimes in a company has to continually be making like movies or shows in order to like keep the license for something. That's what it felt like with Chibi Robo. Except then they just stopped. And I doubt that's what actually happened, but still. It felt like they were only creating Chibi Robos because they were like, sure, why not? He hasn't made one in a while. And then there was the last game, Whiplash, which is just terrible. Chibi Robo Whiplash is absolutely horrible. Nobody even likes it. You know? It's genuinely a terrifyingly horrible game. Just don't play it. And honestly, it just doesn't fit as another Chibi Robo game. It honestly should have just been its own thing. At least then it could die silently and not taint the legacy of the other games, especially the original again. The other games, you know, they're kind of all over the place. But the original is the main one that I actually care about. I mean, come on. Hashtag add Chibi Robo to the next Smash. You know? Prince Soluna. I have no idea who this guy is, if I be honest. This looks like some monkey prince, except guess what? Oh no. Literally on the Nintendo wiki page, he has a single paragraph. One single paragraph. What? All it says is that he's a prince of some kingdom, and he forms a band. I don't know anything about him. But also he's a monkey, so I like him since monkeys are cool. But like genuinely, I don't know. He should be way lower. Again, he only has a single paragraph on the official Nintendo wiki. How is he only on tier 4? You know, that's like tier 6 or 7 stuff. Come on. Tisked Uru Solo Band. I think I said that right. This appears to be the game that the monkey's from. But again, I don't know that much. It says basically nothing about it. I think it's like you make the music and then like the band plays it. I don't know, but I mean, it looks interesting. So maybe if this seems interesting, you should check it out or something. I don't know.
We would like to play.
Well, and that's the end of Part 1, my first video. Am I probably going to regret this in like a year? Yes, probably going to regret this in a month. Yes, probably. But that's Part 1. As for when Part 2 is going to drop, that's going to drop next Friday. Hopefully this will be out on Friday. I don't know, this might be out tomorrow, but yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed that. This probably is not going to get any views, so if you're watching this, then guess good job for finding it. Yeah. Thank you just so much for watching this. You know, so hopefully you can stick around, and welcome to Sakata. Goodbye. And have a holy day. No, that sounds stupid. Have a lovely day.